Thank you so much. Thank you, Anis, for organizing this huge and very timely initiative discussion on Indo-Pacific. I know I'm replacing the original chair. Harinda is a good friend from Sri Lanka. Probably, some issues came up, and it is in fact an interesting. I feel privileged to be part of this forum. I have been listening some discussions from the last one, securities and Indo-Pacific. I'm sure that some of this discussion will also be supplemented or triangulated by the discussions that we will be doing here in the panel on small states in the Indo-Pacific. Well, I have some ideas to share, not a very structured presentation as well, but as I was given the task of chairing the session as well, I'll save my words for the end of the session, and I'm very pleased to share this platform with colleagues from different parts of the world, distinguished colleagues and experts. Already the names are read out. I think we are missing one from Dhaka as well. But I think we can start. But just as an introductory thought, I think the very idea of small state is always an ontological question as well as an epistemological question. I'm a big fan of methodology and philosophy of science. So, in that context, I thought that how do you define small states? Rather, the fact that the role of the small states in Indo-Pacific is obviously a very pertinent and critical research question. Of course, we talk about Pacific Island states. There are forums. There are islands on the Indian Oceans. There are countries who are literal states in the Bay of Bengal, and also there are small islands within the states which sometimes provide a very interesting image of an exogenous sphere within the state. For example, when we talk about Saint Martin in the context of Bangladesh, it has raised severe issues, both geopolitical and geostrategic in concern. So I think understanding the predicaments, understanding the strengths and weaknesses of small states and their roles in Indo-Pacific is a very pertinent research question as well as a policy question. I'm sure that all of us today who will be presenting their thoughts will shade light in various ways of some of these questions. So without further ado, I'd like to invite Mr. Mohammad Saifullah Akon, research scholar from Osaka University, Japan, and also a dear colleague from Dhaka University, Japanese Studies Department. Saifullah, if you start. So we have roughly 10 minutes for presentation, right? And then of course, we'll have more time for the question and answer, Saifullah.
Okay, thank
Floor
you,
is
sir.
yours. Thank you.
So am I visible? Am I
Yes,
visible?
yes,
Okay.
your slides are visible and audible as well. Yeah.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I am honored to present my thoughts on a critical topic, particularly in front of my my teacher, Dr. Niloy Ranjan sir, as the title "Small State, Big Challenges: How Bangladesh is Coping with Indo-Pacific Dynamics." So let me start by asking a question that was in my mind before working in this issue. Like, how does a country like Bangladesh, relatively small in size and resources, navigating the complexities of one of the most contested regions in the world, the Indo-Pacific? As you know, the Indo-Pacific is the center of global politics, trade, and security in the contemporary era. This region spans from the Indian Ocean to the Pacific Ocean and is home to powerful nations like the USA, China, India, and Japan. So the competitions among these major powers directly impacts Bangladesh. Despite being a small state, Bangladesh occupies a crucial position due to its strategic locations, economic growth, and diplomatic engagements. So in this presentation, I will highlight the importance of Bangladesh in the Indo-Pacific region, the challenges Bangladesh faces as a small state, and the strategies Bangladesh has adapted to balance global powers while securing its own interests. So, why is Bangladesh important in the Indo-Pacific region? Bangladesh's importance in the Indo-Pacific comes, from this location and growing economy. Bangladesh is uniquely positioned at the crossroads of South Asia and Southeast Asia. So this location makes it a gateway for trade and connectivity between the two regions. So its 710-kilometer coastline along the Bay of Bengal connects the Indian Ocean, a critical route for global trade. So more than 80% of the world's maritime oil shipments pass through this Indian Ocean. So the key ports like Chattogram and the upcoming Matabari deep sea port make Bangladesh an essential player in the regional trade. So on the other hand, we see that Bangladesh has been one of the fastest growing economy globally. In 2023, its GDP grew by 6.03% according to the World Bank. So with a population of over 170 million, Bangladesh have a large and young workforce that contributes to its economic growth. So the ready-made garments, particularly RMG industry, alone accounts for over 30 billion US dollar in exports annually. So Bangladesh is diversifying its economy, focusing on ICT, pharmaceuticals, and renewable energy to attract its more investment. Even in terms of its power projection, so we see Bangladesh is a global leader in climate change advocacy. As the chair of the Climate Vulnerable Forum, Bangladesh amplify the voices of nations most affected by climate change. Even Bangladesh's contribution to the UN peacekeeping missions reflects its commitment to global peace and security. So the combination of these factors makes Bangladesh a vital player in the Indo-Pacific despite its size. So let us now look at the broader Indo-Pacific dynamics. The region is undergoing constant changes. For example, we see the Indo-Pacific is defined by intense competition between major powers. On one side, the Quad Alliance, consisting of the USA, Japan, India, and Australia, that promotes free and open Indo-Pacific. So their focus is on ensuring freedom of navigation and countering China's growing influence. On the other side, we see China's Belt and Road Initiative that seeks to reshape the regional connectivity through infrastructure investments. So Bangladesh is an active participant in this BRI led by China. And in the regional tensions, we see the Indo-Pacific is also well known for the regional tensions. For example, disputes in the South China Sea have global implications. China's territorial claims conflict with the interest of the neighboring countries and major powers. So even India and China are competing for influence in South Asia. So this rivalry creates both opportunities and challenges for Bangladesh. For example, we see in terms of economy, new trade partnerships like the regional comprehensive economic partnerships or Indo-Pacific economic framework are changing the global economic dynamics. So the restructuring of global supply chains post-COVID-19 that presents opportunities for Bangladesh to enhance its role in manufacturing and logistics. So in terms of security, the region is experiencing the increased militarization as nations enhance their naval capabilities. Non-traditional threats like piracy, illegal fishing, and climate-induced migration also poses additional challenges. So these dynamics create a complex environment for Bangladesh to navigate in the Indo-Pacific. So the evolving Indo-Pacific landscape that brings challenges for Bangladesh, for example, we see it creates a strategic dilemma for Bangladesh. For example, USA, China, India, and Japan have a strategic interest in Bangladesh, aligning too closely with one power, it risks alienating others. So regional alliances like the Quad add further complexity in the South Asia, particularly for Bangladesh. So while the Quad promotes a free and open Indo-Pacific, Bangladesh prefers a non-aligned stance. The Bay of Bengal faces security risks such as piracy, illegal fishing, and maritime boundary disputes. Ensuring like maritime sovereignty is a priority for Bangladesh in the contemporary era. the increasing presence of naval forces, from the major powers in the Indian Ocean, it increases the regional tensions also. So while investments from China and Japan help Bangladesh grow, there is a risk of becoming too dependent on one country. For example, China's investment, under the BRI raised concerns about the long-term debt. Finally, climate change, it's a matter of our existence. So Bangladesh is one of the most climate vulnerable countries in the world. Rising sea levels and frequent cyclones threaten our coastal areas, displacing millions of people and disrupting their livelihoods. So, however, despite these challenges, Bangladesh has demonstrated resilience and adaptability. Bangladesh uses three main strategies to manage these challenges: one, diplomatic balancing act; second, economic diversification and connectivity efforts; and third, security partnerships. So Bangladesh's principle of friendship to all, malice to none guides its foreign policy. So this approach allows to maintain positive relations with all the major powers. However, following this motto, Bangladesh maintains cooperative and friendly relations with the great powers in the Indo-Pacific. For example, we see China has been a long-standing friend and a key development partner for Bangladesh since the beginning of diplomatic ties. Following Xi Jinping's 2016 visit, more positive transformation has been seen in Bangladesh-China relations. The official trip of the President of China to Bangladesh in 2016, which is considered a pivotal moment in the history of bilateral relations between Dhaka and Beijing. The official declaration of the BRI came during the historical visit of Xi Jinping, where 27 agreements totaling 24.45 billion US dollar were signed. So Bangladesh is a key participant in China's Belt and Road Initiative, and major projects include the Podda Bridge rail link and the Paira port, which enhance the connectivity and economic growth. Even Chinese investments have helped develop critical infrastructure, but Bangladesh ensures that this aligns with its long-term interests. On the other hand, in terms of Japan, we see Japan is the biggest bilateral partner of Bangladesh. Bangladesh is one of the largest recipients of Japanese ODA at present. So apart from the ODA, Japan's economic engagement in Bangladesh is also characterized by foreign direct investment and bilateral trade. Even Bangladesh signed the official security assistance with Japan to enhance maritime security and cooperations. So this partnership reflects shared values of a free and open Indo-Pacific. So under the 43 loan packages so far, the Japanese government has funded many projects in different sectors of Bangladesh, including Matarbari Deep Sea Port and the Dhaka Metro Rail to strengthen Bangladesh's infrastructure and connectivity. Even Bangladesh's collaboration with the USA on trade and security under the FIP framework, we see the US provides support for counterterrorism and maritime security. Even US-Bangladesh partnership has also on democracy, human rights, and economic development. On the other hand, as a neighboring country, India, we see Bangladesh shares deep historical and economic ties with India. Connectivity projects like the BBIN corridor and transboundary railways is enhance the regional trade. However, through this balancing act, we see Bangladesh secures economic benefits while preserving its independence. Economic diversification is also crucial for Bangladesh's resilience. Bangladesh is expanding its trade beyond traditional markets in Europe and North America. New trade partnerships like with ASEAN, the Middle East, and Africa are being also developed. The diversification of export products such as the ICT and pharmaceuticals is also reduces reliance on the textile sector. Even in terms of the increasing foreign investment, we see Bangladesh is creating a business-friendly environment. Equal opportunities are provided to all investors, ensuring a balanced approach. So sectors like renewable energy, ICT, and manufacturing are priorities for attracting global investments. These efforts are strengthening Bangladesh's position as an economic hub. Uh, for example, we see here is a net FDI inflow by China and Japan in Bangladesh between 2013 and 2022. So, as you know, security, is a crucial pillar of any country's strategy. So, like others, Bangladesh is also very much concerned about their security, particularly maritime security. So, in that case, we see Japan's supports Bangladesh's coast guards with training and equipment. This enhances Bangladesh's ability to safeguard maritime resources. Even Bangladesh is mobilizing its navy by purchasing arms from multiple countries, including China. For example, according to Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, we see that China is Bangladesh's most important arms supplier. So this diversification ensures that strategic balance. Even Bangladesh collaborates with the USA and regional powers to combat terrorism and piracy in the Bay of Bengal. So this joint exercise and intelligence sharing strengthen Bangladesh's security capabilities. So by investing in security partnerships, Bangladesh enhance its sovereignty and stability. So in conclusion, we can say that Bangladesh is a small state facing big challenges in the Indo-Pacific. But Bangladesh may be a small state, but it has proven that size doesn't limit significance. Its strategic locations, economic growth, and diplomatic strategies make a key player in the Indo-Pacific region. So despite challenges like geopolitical pressures, economic vulnerabilities, and climate risks, Bangladesh continues to navigate these complexities with resilience. So through a balanced fund policy, economic diversification, and strategic security partnerships, Bangladesh sets an example for smaller states worldwide. So that's all from me. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Mohammad Saifullah Akon. Quite an interesting one. And a few questions that came to my mind from the presentation, and particularly highlighting a single case study, Bangladesh, and its significance in the Indo-Pacific is, what is the agency of an individual state when we are talking about Indo-Pacific as a region, which is obviously mostly a very significant geostrategic sphere in that context. And also at the same time, when we were talking about balancing, I think a few questions that would always raise in the broader political science, international relations, and these disciplines, similar disciplines, is that are we redefining balancing? And because in the Cold War context, when we talk about balancing, of course, when it was a bipolar era, and when we redefine the contemporary era as multipolar, complex world order, or add some more qualifier into that. So how do an individual state or quote unquote small state do balance, or do they have the agency to do balance in this context? I think you have started a very with some of these ideas. We have started a very interesting discussion, and we can move forward to the further discussions that we have, and I'm sure that some of the interesting ideas will come up as well. Do we have Dr. Zeno Leone, lecturer from King's
Um,
College?
I'm sorry, I apologize to interfere, but I heard that Mr. Jano is not feeling well, so he might not
Oh,
speak.
okay,
Okay, so you can move
sure.
on with the other speakers.
Yeah, then I can see Dr. Barbara Kratiuk from Vistula University, Poland. Dr. Barbara, floor is yours. And since we have one or two speaker missing, so of course, you can go forward a little bit further, more than 10 minutes, maybe perhaps 12 to 15. Thank you so much. Floor is yours, Dr. Barbara. Need to unmute. Oh, okay. The organizers.
Yeah.
Can
Hi.
you
So
check that?
Yes, right,
yes,
right.
now I think it's working. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you so much for Tunis for organizing this very interesting event and for inviting me to this panel. I think I'm going to try and build a little on what my predecessor said. And also going to be a bit of a loose thoughts. I'm going to try to contain myself in those 10 minutes because I think we can have a very interesting exchange of ideas afterwards as well. And what I want to talk a little bit about is kind of the result of a project in Indo-Pacific I did with some colleagues of mine in La Sapienza and at Ritsumeikan Asia Pacific University. Among others, about the role of middle and small powers. And as Professor Biswas said at the very beginning, the whole definition of a small state, small power is fluid, because it all depends on what kind of markers we want to take in. Because if we look just through geographic limitations or population limitations, that you would say that Singapore is definitely a small state. However, its influence on Indo-Pacific and on the region is definitely not that of a small state. So here I would argue that in general, small states would be small powers in relation to a very specific variable. Otherwise, it would be basically impossible to define them. So basically, economic small powers, of course, are measured by their gross domestic product. Political small powers by this small, low involvement in the region, in international organizations, in global diplomatic networks. And of course, military small powers would then be automatically classified by their low expenditure into the military, and really so on. And so, of course, most of the small states that we're talking about will actually have a combination of all those. Of course, not all, because, of course, population-wise, again, Singapore is very much involved in both international organizations and in the global diplomatic networks. So in that sense, we cannot really claim that politically it is a small state. But I want to take into account a couple of cases. These are the ones that we looked at with my colleagues, and look at their general strategies, because of course the previous presentation talked about Bangladesh, but Bangladesh is of course also in a very specific position of being a small state in some ways, but not in others. Well, I'm going to focus on the states where, if we talk about these variables, they would be small states in accordance to basically all of them. So of course, these would be the states that would be small in relation to the ranks and performances of all the other Indo-Pacific states, including the behavior, including the way it is contrasted with others. So basically, my definition, my working definition here today is that small states are then defined as though with low objectives and low perceived rank. In the context of where they are acting, Indo-Pacific, of course, and as actors whose prescriptions differ from those of middle and great powers, which are above them in the hierarchy, as kind of looking into war, really. So the countries that I really want to look at are Laos, the Maldives, and of course, and Papua New Guinea and the Pacific Island countries. I'm grouping them together because most of the characteristics are actually common for them. And if we look at most of those, we would see basically two main strategies. And it would be either bandwagoning, especially in the case of Laos and Papua New Guinea. This is definitely bandwagoning, of course, with two different states. But in the case of Maldives and Pacific Island countries, I would argue it's more hedging kind of combined with a lot of non-alignment. So basically with Laos, this is definitely bandwagoning. And if we want to talk about bandwagoning, of course, this is essentially to avoid any type of attack by accepting a domination of a certain state. And it is very much a defensive strategy that is often employed by small states. The small states such as Laos that have very little recourse because of the low engagement in international relations, because of the low network of diplomacy that it has, also because of its political system constraints, it actually doesn't really have much other choice other than to join in many ways and bandwagon with China. And of course, Walt would argue that bandwagoning can also be for security and defense. It doesn't have to be out of fear. And there's also a very clear expectation of a certain profit. And we can see Laos has been profiting from bandwagoning with China. Of course, the railway that the Chinese companies build in Laos is one very good example of this type of bandwagoning, bringing in profits. But of course, it could also be argued that this type of bandwagoning with such a huge discrepancy in power between a great power and such a small state would also create a very unhealthy relationship in many ways and increase dependence of the small state on the great power to the point where it would actually negatively impact its sovereignty. And this is definitely something that in many ways Maldives have been trying to prevent, but Maldives have been also a bit flip-flopping when it comes to their approach towards great powers, because it keeps really a swinging behavior, but that also depends on the government. But we have this maximum benefit cooperation with China, all the way back to India and to closer cooperation with the United States, and then back to China. So in many ways, it is kind of hedging, but it could also be argued that this is trying to balance out and not align fully with either one, at least not align permanently the way that Laos was forced to do. This is not something that Papua New Guinea, on the other hand, can do, because it has also been bandwagoning, mostly with rising China. Of course, now there's going to be more questions about this when China is not able to perform as well and provide as much in return for that political support that they have been enjoying from countries like Laos and Papua New Guinea. There is also a more aggressive appearance of countries like Australia, which are going to try and counterbalance that bandwagon of small states supporting China instead of supporting AP4 and United States. And this is also something that is definitely happening when it comes to Pacific Island states. With Pacific Island states, with some, of course, notable exceptions, they are trying to maintain a certain non-aligned position. So, of course, they are trying to enjoy the perks of working with each of them, but that's because all states are, of course, very much lacking in investment in infrastructure. And China has been, of course, using this very much to their advantage, while states like Australia, New Zealand, United States, or Japan have kind of missed their chance at the beginning. But now, among others, with the Project for Quality and Infrastructure, Pacific Island states are actually more looking forward to working together with AP4, because they also see that working together with China comes as a cost. And while they want to enjoy the benefits, they definitely don't want to throw their full political support after one of these offers, because they're just afraid that because of their very small size, this is not going to be beneficial for them, and it's better to try and play the long game where they are able to kind of play one against the other. And I think my kind of final country that we have looked at in the project that was very interesting is Brunei, because Brunei is very small in all terms, again, except one, of course, the gross domestic product per capita is actually very high, but that doesn't mean that the population is very rich as opposed to Singapore. So in many ways, because of the low impact of the population on global markets and the relatively also low impact of Brunei itself on global markets and on economy, I would still classify it as a state that is very low on all of these variables, including the economic one. And Brunei has also, as a bit surprisingly, been very much pro-China, which shows us a very dangerous trend for the AP4 and for United States, because the whole idea of implementing the strategy of Indo-Pacific was to try and contain Chinese influence, at least when we talk about why Japan and the United States have been doing this. And seeing that Brunei is yet another small country in the Indo-Pacific that has been working, bandwagoning with China, and trying to kind of work with them regarding all things like regional territorial disputes. That means that small states in those strategies of AP4 have been very much neglected. If they are so much still invested with China and don't mind as much this huge discrepancy of power, this huge asymmetry, which actually can and has before been abused by Beijing, by the government in Beijing. So basically, this means that these strategies are failing when it comes to small states, at least based on the examples that we have looked at in the project. I will stop here, and I'm absolutely very happy to have any questions and comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barbara Kratiuk. You have raised quite a few very interesting and thought-provoking questions, in fact. And, sorry if I always find out questions from the presentation, and I think, that's the task that we need to do as academic and researchers. So, first of all, you have questioned the idea of, I think, bandwagoning, another very Cold War terminology, but have been redefined and, reformulated in various ways. The examples, particularly that of from South Asia, island countries, West Asia, are quite significant, and I think we need to re-raise these questions always, that whether to what extent the quote unquote small states have gain the agency or acquire the agency to kind of direct some of the policies that they do, or is it still the very neorealist pattern of understanding that the structure, in this case particularly the big powers in the Indo-Pacific, kind of influence more that how the agency should work. So these questions have been revolved in various ways, and your presentation have also, I think, raised some of these very interesting points for discussions and food for thoughts for the discussion. So again, I thank you so much, and also it's time to invite two speakers from Philippines. We have Jumel Estrañero, sorry for my pronunciation, and also Atty, Fatima Saquilayan from De La Salle University, Philippines. So time is yours, floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Niloy Biswas of the University of Dhaka and the nice organization of Dr. Pramod Jaswal for organizing this event, as well as my esteemed and very supportive co-author, Attorney Fatima J. Saquilayan, as we have written a short paper about the current po- political dynamics in the West Philippine Sea as being categorized as one of the major flashpoint in the Southeast Asia. I also would like to big mention a very good mentor and friend, Dr. Amparo Pamela Fabe, which um, I found about calling as Atty, one of the professors in the University of the Philippines, and a security expert in the ASEAN. Um, I guess before I present our presentation, there are two major points which we want to highlight that actually triggers the study. In fact, our topic was categorized under the small state, small state in the Indo-Pacific. The first one is the idea of unilateralism and the logic of maritime security, which I believe the West Philippine Sea and the South China Sea is actually included. The formation of this um, new new unilateral groupings have actually prompted some important questions that we want to answer in these presentations. First is, so why are such configurations emerging in the Pacific? What explains the rise of bilaterals or the small states, uh, political dynamics in the region, and further with the US, Japan, and Australia, which are actually involved in the grouping, are being named Squad. Because naturally, this kind of reference has been drawn to the already existing quad. And then the other trigger or the um, another rather factor that triggers us for us to study about this current dynamic again in the West Philippines is that there is a decade-long quest for a legally binding code of conduct for parties in the South China Sea, which can be a story of either frustration, if not failure, for the Philippines to secure its territorial integrity. This kind of frustration stems from the very idea that the Philippines were relatively smaller size in material resources vis-a-vis those hegemons and emerging powers like China and those middle powers would generate a strategic effect in the maritime space. Of course, the Philippines need much more to prove middle power preponderance in the long run. It cannot utilize near obsolete approaches to address its problems. The ASEAN's bloc membership, for example, in terms of size and differing priority interest, often hampered agreements and are perceived as said to be the stumbling block. The limitations of these choices among smaller states within the region um, pushed pushed states to only or to tap only neighbors with vested interest in particular issue. Hence, the concept of minilateralism or small states is instrumental for the Philippines as well as with the ASEAN to at least optimize its recently gained middle power status. So let me share with you our presentation, and I hope you are seeing seeing this one. So again, the narratives in the West Philippine Sea among states like US, China, Japan, and the ASEANs um, are very important for as factors, no, in the determination of the policy and the strategic recommendations in the Philippines as well with other smaller states political choices. Um, just to give you some sort of background about our study, this is going to be the context of or the flow about the background, antecedents, analysis, conclusion, and our way ahead. And as you see here, it's only like in the first quarter of this year when China Coast Guard suffered holes in the hole or in the hull rather above waterline after its collision with the Philippine Coast Guard's Japanese made Parola class. That is of course a manifestation wherein the Philippines is quite connected with Japan, making some sort of multi-role response uh, in the maritime domain, wherein that particular Parola class was made in Japan, and this was even followed by a series of coercive acts by China against Filipino fishermen, and a serious threat to the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Philippines. And both actions of China here are considered as an overt portrayal of the deteriorating diplomatic relations between two countries. Another thing is that in the middle of this year, we have we have seen that there's a lot of dangerous maneuvers by China, including the ramming and towing against supply boats of the with the armed forces of the Philippines, and these coercive and aggressive actions during the RORE mission, which is of course considered as an important and significant act um, by uh, by by our forces for a supply and resupply of foods and other sustenance of our people there. Um, and in addition with that, uh, when Chinese maritime forces endured 8 Filipino soldiers, one of whom suffered a serious injury, and uh, and China was able to seize their guns in a violent encounter, that can be considered as a serious operations against our operations group. And we have to take note that the fact that the assaults by the Chinese Coast Guard or the CCG against the Philippine vessels were committed by either water cannons and ramming the watercraft, it extends to the point that whereby it was alleged that in addition to the use of water cannons um, and ramming the aircraft, the CCG is said to are is said to have a long-range acoustic device that can actually impair the hearing of our forces situated there. Now, these 5 incidents here can be considered as a string of recent standoff, not only in the West Philippine Sea but also in the South China Sea, including the most recent one in the Sabina Shoal, wherein it sparked calls for the Philippines to urgently rethink its South China Sea strategy. Now, we want to highlight here in our study also that the event which transpired last August, where the Chinese Air Force craft dropped flares in path of Philippine Air Force, um, was on was actually in the routine patrol over the Bao de Masinloc, or the famous or famously known as the Scarborough Shoal, which is of course within the Philippines exclusive economic zones, putting the lives of these Filipino soldiers. Again, these acts by with the People's Republic of China are inconsistent with the international law, and are best and these are the latest in the repeated threats to the status quo in the South China Sea. Now, I would like to highlight also here that this year, there was a president visit to the Western Command of the Armed Forces of the Philippines in Palawan, and the policy mandate of the president was actually mentioned, and he said that history itself can tell that we have never in the Philippines yielded to any foreign power. We owe to our forefathers the the duty to keep the freedoms that they fought, bled and died for, and they presently enjoy. What he was trying to say is that the strategic policy was guided by the overall geopolitical alignment of the Philippines in the Indo-Pacific security, even though we consider ourselves as a small state, and within the ASEAN partnerships. And in one occasion, for example, it's not only the president who said the same kind of narrative, but the Department of National Defense also said that what ensued in the Ayungin is not a misunderstanding or any accident that has been claiming by China, but it's actually a intended move by the Chinese forces. Now let's go with the analysis part, looking into the lens of the Indo-Pacific security in the Philippine strategic policy. Again, even if the Philippines is not a major player in the Indo-Pacific, because it is of course we have US, Australia, Japan, and India in the actual platform. The United States of America, on one hand, categorically said that the U.S. policy on the West Philippine Sea does not change and will continue to support the Philippines. So, as you are as you see here, there there are at least four points we want to stress out. The first one is the strategic policy intent. The second one is the deliberate act of the Chinese officialdom. The third one is the consistency of the United States in terms of their policy upheaval. Like they have been reflecting what the mutual defense treaty is all about. And lastly, the gentleman's agreement, which is up until now is not yet proven and could be led by the political propaganda, not only from the external affairs but also internally in the Philippines, which have been exploited by both parties, from the administration and the opposition side. Now, this is one of the enmeshed narrative that I want to discuss, or we want to discuss. No? The recent agreements of three countries' long-standing defense, which have given five narratives or development. The first one is the alliances of the alliance between US and Japan in relation with the JCCS, and then the second one is the upgrading and integrating their defense communications and air defense networks, and the last three is all about the furtherance of their alliances, both in the defense industry at the same time with the capacity building. Japan has started to make changes also in the interpretation of this pacifist constitution since World War II. But again, this might be subject of debate because after a few months, they have been touting a different kind of uh, a narrative again in the East Asia. Now, to conclude, to assure the security of Philippine troops and the citizenry, a strong and more assertive instance has to be asserted by the Philippines. A more strategic way of seeing things is that it can be cascaded and streamlined either by diplomatic and political security efforts, minus the defense cooperations formally in the middle. One of the last slides that we want to show you are some of the policy recommendations and probably a call to action to all the viewers at the same time, readers of this paper. Um, the first one is the possibility of passing the Philippines Enhanced Resilience Act of 2024, the PERA Act, which was actually triggered um, as a way forward also by the United States Senators Phil Hagerty, a Republican, and another by and well, it was actually introduced with the Philippines Enhanced or the PERA to at least strengthen and modernize the U.S.-Philippines alliance. That is actually the aim of that. The second one is that well the second has a very important calculation among the members of Quad and or the quadrilateral security members, but also the small states or the minilateral states, because again there is a Trump 2.0 um, leading to the questions on how will the Philippines assess and navigate its defense posture in national security stake with the reinstallation of Trump administration vis-a-vis the current or the incumbent administration in our fence. Again, the possibility of um, actively joining the Quad or for China's containment. And another question is, will it be more lax to emphasize its making America great again, or the MAGA political banner from the domestic to external actors towards the multilateral state? Or US will be more focused on its unilateral political alignment. Like, for example, more US-centric and lesser instance in the Middle East policy, such as the withdrawal of the military reinforcement in Iraq before, during its stint. And then another recommendation or policy recommendation is to at least continue what the current administration has started, which is to have a regular basis for the supply mission in the Sierra Madre. Fourth one is to always or strategically call out the Chinese act as the aggressive militarizations and dangerous tactical operations, not only in the Philippines fence, but also with the ASEAN region. And then fifth would be the commitment to finding peaceful resolutions. And up until now in the Philippines, there is still a contestation whether the mandatory ROTC would be passed here. But if it will pass, then I hope that this would be a good template, not only in the domestic sphere, but also with other regions like in the ASEAN. And the last two has something to do with the support, most especially from our Congress, wherein there's a need for increased budget or the funding for the welfare and the training of our troops, and the support for the approval of the budget allocation aimed at enhancing our maritime defense capabilities. I would like to highlight, last but not the least, I would like to say that recently here in the Philippines, we have, although we are a small state, we were able to at least ink two laws in the Philippines, which is the maritime zones and the archipelagic sea lanes. And I'm very proud to say that as a Filipino, that kind of passage declares the maritime zones under the Philippine jurisdiction. It even designates sea lanes in the country of foreign vessels and aircraft. I hope that's going to be a good starting point from the lens of the from other states in the ASEAN, that even though they might be considering Philippines as a weak link in the ASEAN, Philippines is doing its best to leverage with the international community, and its advocacy to at least uphold its rules-based international order is always aligned, not only with the UNCLOS, that 1982 UNCLOS, but also this administration's resolve to uh, to protect the country's maritime resources. And that's it. Thank you so much, sir. And again, this is Jumel and Atty. Saquilayan's presentations.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jumel, and also Atty Fatima, for the presentation. I think you have rightly and quite in an interesting way highlighted Philippines as a very critical case to understand various aspects of the roles and predicaments of small states in the region. I'd particularly like to highlight, for example, like, if we want to utilize the understanding of security dilemma, which we always have tried to understand from the perspective of the big powers, but at the same time, in South China Sea, broadly in Indo-Pacific, I think, some of the cooperations and counter cooperations have also created a perception of security dilemma among the states and kind of put leverage on the state itself, which we often highlight as the balancing act. Now, secondly, also it is very interesting to kind of, if I understand correctly, that the issue that the relations between the big powers in other parts or their own relations is not immune from the small states' relations with the respective states. For example, the relations between China and Japan in the region or in the close proximity obviously influences the relations between, for example, Philippines and China and Philippines and Japan and the other neighboring countries as well. So it is for Philippines, for example, like it's in close proximity. But for example, when we talk about Bangladesh, which is quite at a distance, but it's still when we were having our independent, unique relationship with China and Japan. So the Chinese-Japanese relationship in different other parts of the geography is also very important. And this is due to probably like more connectivity, the framework that has been offered by Indo-Pacific or even Chinese own connectivity projects through BRI. So I think quite a few interesting points that I noted. And I guess we do not have any other speakers apart from me and us, those who have presented so far as. ASM Tariq Hassan is absent. Can the organizer confirm that do we have any other presenters left? No. Yeah.
I think yeah, we have
Yeah.
no more speakers now.
Thank you. Thank you. I had a few points, and frankly speaking, because I was preparing my own 2 cents for these understandings, I'll probably take like 5 minutes or so, then we can open up for the question and answers or observations. I already noted there are a few very interesting questions for specific speakers that has raised in the comments box as well. Now, when I was thinking that what idea can we share? So more holistically, without going for any particular country that came to my mind, I was thinking that do small states matter in terms of creating and diffusing norms? Like in terms of concepts in broadly political science and IR, I'm moved into this, norm setting and norm creations kind of business. So of course not what we think of as the very traditional understanding of international relations, which I think is not really interesting at this point, even if you listen to some of the very interesting ideas of John Jemiah Scheimer and so on and so forth. So more like how the Indo-Pacific framework, not only in terms of increasing security and economic cooperations, but at the same time, does it provide a space for the small states to kind of create or diffuse some of the bigger norms, for example, new liberalism, because we all understand that when we talk about new liberalism, and in fact, in the context of Indo-Pacific as well, when we try to highlight the rule-based order, of course, this is a very important and significant component of the neoliberal order. So how do small states, or is it the small states who carry forward the same value that has been highlighted during the 20th century in terms of creating the understanding of the neoliberal order, or the small states have been able to kind of divert or add significant components in the established value systems or some sort of uniqueness in these ideas as well. whether in the areas of security cooperations, because we have been talking about, all of you have been talking about, security cooperation, national interest, at the same time, cooperation with the countries. They might not be very much friendly towards each other, or so on and so forth. So when we talk about liberal world order, because there are also a big plethora of studies that talk about that new liberal world order is failing, therefore why do we need to be part of these bigger connectivity projects if the ideological idea is to establish a new liberal world order? So what value the small states add into it, apart from the fact that, and as all of you have rightly mentioned, that it is very difficult to generalize the idea of small states. Therefore, it's very difficult to measure that all small states, quote unquote, will act in a similar way. So, for example, when we talk about democracy promotion, human rights, free market, rule of law, multilateralism, are all of these, is there a pattern that we can follow, uh, uh, which might be a diffuser of the same norms that have been coming from, or we can also think of that what new things that these states have been actually adding to, based on the culture and context. So I think this is, to my idea, is something very important, because for example, if you take climate change as one of the, and my examples would be mostly classified as quote unquote non-traditional aspects, so not perhaps very much military, war, and those who are more attractive components of the international relations. But I still think that some of the non-traditional threats, where actually the collaboration of small states would be more impactful. And when we talk about providing norms or creating norms and diffusing norms, may be instrumental in this sector. So climate change is obviously one of the big areas. So I think in the discussion as well, the references have been there, particularly regarding when we talk about climate vulnerable states. We usually have seen the patterns in the United Nations, like LDC countries and so on and so forth, mostly based on the economic activities, but also at the same time, I think the platforms of climate change, where we have seen that IORA, Pacific Island forums, and others have also played very significant roles. Even though if you measure from the outcomes, it might not show the optimism that the small states have had the agency to influence the bigger decisions. But at the same time, certain norms and standards have been evolved, influenced, and also changed and transformed over the period of time, because there has been a collaboration of the victim states, or climate victim states, or the way how we put these things over there. Again, does it has it been possible to change the bigger transformation from the mitigation to adaptation, but at least preserving the rights of the climate victim states and asking for climate finance? There are a lot of questions and issues regarding the management and the commitment of the Western states, those who have contributed more in the carbon emission. Despite that, I think this is one of the few areas where small states collectively in the region broadly have been able, within the framework of neoliberal collaborations, to stand with their own ideas, voices, and kind of push, or the way how we say, like push the bigger walls with some sort of norm setting. um, is there other areas, particularly when we talk about democratic governments, human rights, rule-based orders? There are obviously different practices. There are obviously differences. It has been problematic to, if you like, for example, different indexes where we want to see the Indo-Pacific small, quote unquote, small countries regarding their democratic governance, human rights conditions, and so on and so forth. But there has been an effort. There has been an effort. There are very interesting championing countries like Timor-Leste in the process of democratic governance and so on and so forth. And they have been following and at the same time contributing in the ideas of how the governance reform can be conducted, improving the situations of human rights and so on and so forth. And championing these ideas in several multilateral forums, whether it be regional like ASEAN, and also the global ones like United Nations. But this is one area which can also be considered as counter-argumentative as well. Like, does do the small states really follow the norm that has been established by the Western neoliberal ideas, particularly when we talk about democracy, human rights, and so on and so forth? Of course, you can bring examples where the strugglingness within these can raise a question. Now, the next question then it would be that whether this connectivity project in Indo-Pacific would facilitate or inspire countries, small states, to become more democratic and do the reforms in the institutions to uphold the neoliberal values of democracy and human rights. The other small example I think Mr. Akon has raised, that is the Bangladesh's contribution is peacekeeping, and that is mostly global South. And if you look at the global contributors over there as well in the last couple of years, last at least 3 decades, I'd like to say, is of course where the global South has been contributing to peacekeeping, some sort of idea which goes beyond the strategic military engagements. Now, quite frustratingly, less than 1/50th of the entire defense budget is actually used by the United Nations for peacekeeping. So it's very tiny amount if you see the last year's budget, what has been utilized by the peacekeeping for the peacekeeping, in fact, compared to the entire defense budget of the top 10 countries, which is very frustrating. But at the same time, if you see the more countries from the global South that were engaged into that, has not only an instrumental value, but also a very conceptual contribution regarding the understanding of peacekeeping and peace building as well. There are critiques of peacekeeping saying that United Nations is just being used by the global P5, which one can argue or disargue with that. But at the same time, I think this is one of the very few areas where the countries from global South has contributed in terms of understanding, formulating, and reframing the understanding of peace as a critical point from global South. So finally, if the question is asked again, that whether the small countries are norm creators, I think still this is a problem, because the way how we see the Indo-Pacific connectivity framework is still quite hierarchical. There is an effort to provide equal opportunities and spheres to all countries. At least if you are a researcher who'd like to do a discourse, use a methodology to do a content analysis or try to understand the discourse, you would see the speech of the major actors, that when it talks about rule-based order and equal opportunity, that's over there. But probably, I think, still the real politic is championing over the normative or the constructivist understanding of this framework or connectivity. So if not contributor in norms creation, it's actually diffusing the norms and spreading it up. So and there are contextual contributions of countries. For example, Pacific Island forums as a platform, or climate vulnerability forum as a collective platform, have created their own identity outside of the umbrella of the big powers. So there are multiple challenges to these norm creation processes, but still, I think it's important, and particularly if you want to focus more on the non-traditional aspect of the security and cooperation, the small states should be given more opportunities, particularly when it is about highlighting their own voice, highlighting their own ideas, either individually or collectively, and to diffuse the norms to promote more a liberal world order with peace and sustainability. So I'd stop here, and there were a few questions already in the platform. will the audience be interested to speak it out, or if you see the chat box, you can also start answering some of these questions. Thank you once again to all of you, all the speakers, for your presentation. Right. So
I know, I'm sorry, I said that there is a question for me from
sure.
Ms. Amparo. I'm happy to answer this. So the
Please.
question was that basically do I think that so that I explained the hedging and non-alignment of Maldives, would the improved Maldives-India relations as reflected in the currency swap between Reserve Bank and the complete drawdown of Indian military personnel from Maldives be considered as part of the hedging strategy of Maldives? Do you think, or do you consider this improved relations as long-term foreign policy shift? Honestly, I don't think we can guarantee any kind of long-term policy shift, because we have seen very clearly that different governments have very vastly different approaches to India and China. And because democracies are what they are, I don't think we can guarantee that a pro-China government won't be selected in the next elections. So honestly, I think that it marks kind of definitely an improvement in the relationship between India and Maldives, which from the Maldives perspective has always been a little contested and fraught with tensions. As with many other South Asian countries, if purely because of India's size. Of course, there are other matters included here. So I do think this is a show of goodwill, especially on the part of India, and a way to try and improve the relationship with Maldives, because Maldives for India are very strategically placed. And India has always been afraid of what has been called either a string of pearls or an iron necklace strategy, that basically China could surrender India in the Indian Ocean with ports in very strategic locations. And it already has two such strategic locations. China does in the port in Gwadar, and of course in Sri Lanka, the Hambantota port. And of course, another port potentially in Maldives, with the base in Djibouti, could actually increase India's sense of insecurity. So I do think that there is a role to play for Maldives here, and Maldives can use this to more permanently increase or improve their relationship with India. But I also do think it will not be an easy or straightforward operation, especially since the current government in India is very much a believer in the India as a great power, and will probably more try to position themselves much higher than Maldives. So thank you so much. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah.
Well,
In addition, right. Yeah, there was one question also for Saifullah. Saifullah, I think you have read the question, so you can, if you'd like to.
yes, thank you, sir. The question is mainly, will the deteriorating Bangladesh-India relations have any impact on the security of the Bay of Bengal and Bangladesh trade prospects, given that India is its second largest trading partner? Yes, deteriorating Bangladesh-India relations could significantly impact both the security of the Bay of Bengal and Bangladesh's trade prospects. I mean, given their geographic proximity and historical ties, any strain in relations would create several challenges for Bangladesh and India as well. For example, in India and Bangladesh, they share vital maritime interests in the Bay of Bengal, including combating piracy, ensuring safe shipping lanes and protecting the marine resources. So both countries have, cooperated through joint maritime patrols and naval exercises to secure the region. So if relations worsen, reduced cooperations could lead to security gaps and making the Bay of Bengal, vulnerable and allow third party to be involved. So the urgent relations would become a more security threat to India than Bangladesh. And in terms of trade, we see India is Bangladesh's second largest trading partner, with bilateral trade reaching probably around 14 billion US dollar in last year. So the origin relations could lead to trade disruptions due to the stricter border controls, border delays or tariffs affecting the supply chains and Bangladesh's manufacturing sectors, particularly garments and pharmaceuticals. But as the world is more complex and interconnected, so Bangladesh might find others as trading partners. As you know, already Bangladesh increased its trade relations with Pakistan, and definitely we have good trade relations with China. So even Bangladesh might go to ASEAN for further economy and trade. So I think it would be, definitely not good for both India and Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you. We have one question for Jumel and Fatima as well, from Mira. Yeah, how does the West Philippine Sea dispute illustrate the challenges faced by small states in defending their territorial integrity against larger powers?
Thank you, Dr. Niloy. I'll take the opportunity to answer the excellent question by Mira, right? So, just a brief background for us to understand what transpired or what happened in the West Philippine Sea disputes is that the Philippines lodged its claim to the International Court, the Permanent Court of Arbitration, for its sovereign rights in the exclusive economic zone of the Philippines, which is the West Philippine Sea, which is a greater part of the South China Sea, correct? And here's what happened. So although it was lodged in the International Arbitration Court and that the court ruled in favor of the Philippines, we can still see how China poses and imposes its power along and within the sea or the territory in dispute. And it poses challenge on smaller states, since we can see how power dynamics and of course how the hegemons and the powerful countries can illustrate how it can somehow deviate from the rulings and it still enforce its claim over a territory despite it being a signatory in the UNCLOS. And also, however, aside from the somehow negative or the challenges that it may impose, there's still there's still a positive side over this dispute or issue, since it can show how small countries, small states in the Indo-Pacific could at least still fight a larger or a greater force, since it can be seen like the members of the ASEAN nation, there are other 5 members who are experiencing the same dispute as of the Philippines. However, it is only the Philippines as of today who has shown audacity. I'm looking at that word, the audacity, yet the courage to fight for what it believes it belongs to them. Thank you.
Thank you. Jumel, you'd like to add anything or?
Yes. Sorry.
No
Uh,
problem.
my mic was really turned off. I guess the question of Miss Mira is actually is timely. That let me read again. How does West Philippine Sea illustrate challenges faced by small states? I guess so. To answer that, there there had been and there would always be challenges that the Philippines that has to overcome as a small state, and it must overcome first to boost rather its role in minilaterals.
Mm.
First, it should iron a consistent narrative that its push for minilateralism as part of the smaller states political dynamic, just like what was mentioned by my partner, Attorney Saquilayan or Fatima. Um, there must be some sort of creative augmentation among the ASEAN centrality
Mm.
rather than it diminishes it. While the current minilaterals of smaller states do not challenge larger groupings, the Philippines must must stress out the stress out the participation in subgroups, and it has not complicated relations with the rest of the ASEAN. The long-term goal should be to at least strengthen the ASEAN as a whole, not in pieces. Although a lot of think tanks have been saying that ASEAN is only a talk shop, but
Mm.
still there will always be a venue for the ASEAN to at least um, make the subgroupings be more complicated than in the long run. And therefore, there must be a conscious effort to utilize unilateral smaller states arrangement as complementary to a more comprehensive multilateral setup. Another challenge challenge that the Philippines has to address is it doesn't the Philippines and even other neighbors in the ASEAN was not able to maintain the consistency with its alignment with the United States. I'm not saying that we have to be aligned with the United States as the
Mm.
major power or the hegemon, but then again, a major threat in the South China Sea is of course
Mhm.
as being disputed against China, and that is the backdrop of that. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that it's our options should be narrow, but if anything, U.S. Free and open Indo-Pacific strategy may actually endorse Philippines as smaller state and the ASEAN centrality to favor the so-called regional proactivity. And lastly, again, one of the challenges again is how the code of conduct will make a big impact in realizations upon its passage, because if minilateralism or smaller states concept becomes a format for cooperation in the South China Sea, the the Philippines must be able to assert its leadership role in the geopolitical backyard.
Mm.
Again, there will always have to be peaceful negotiations as is a primary goal. It has to convince other claimant states, smaller states like, CLMV states like Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, and Vietnam, which have been allies of China. And lastly, those kind of options should be asserted and secured the waters from the illegal and aggressive actions. To cut the long story short, the smaller states and minilateralism concept in the Pacific region vis-a-vis the West Philippine Sea flashpoint. Um, those four states involved in the Indo-Pacific region are in the Indo-Pacific Security or the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue have to secure their alliances and their promises also with the smaller states, particularly with the Maritime Security Dialogue that they have been saying as part of the strategic communications. And it would only be credible with credible partners and defense capabilities if they would pursue those mutual defense treaties along with other smaller states.
Thank you. Thank you, both of you. Is there any other questions? We have Barbara has just left, so if there is any other question to the speakers or observation, can spend some time. Otherwise, we can conclude as well. Yeah. Yeah, I was also thinking, just a quick thought that came to my mind when I was listening to both of you, particularly regarding the case of Philippines as well, the issues regarding um, the South China Sea and West Philippine Sea as well. So when we are talking about the role of the small states, I think one interesting, I would like to say much more like an intervening variable is the situations within the state itself. Like, for example, whether to what extent the state is stable, the internal conflicts, political instabilities, these also matter a lot. The relations within the relations in between the small state is also quite significant. For example, I was thinking of the situations between Bangladesh and Myanmar since 2017 onwards regarding the issues of the refugees, and at the same time, the civil war started and expanded from 2022 onwards, which definitely destabilized the country itself. Therefore, any ongoing development projects or connectivity would be definitely hampered when this kind of situation exists between or within the state itself. So that's also something very important. Yeah. Any other thoughts from uh, respected audience that we have? All right. So, yeah, yeah. Thank you. So, Dr. Pramod or the organizers from the NICE side, anything? All right. So shall we end the session? Yeah. I think silence is kind of like a constant. So thank you once again. Thank you the speakers. Thank you the organizers, Dr. Pramod and his colleagues from Nepal Organizations for International Cooperation and engagement for organizing this huge event, and particularly for this panel, provided us the opportunity to interact, shed lights on these small states and its role in Indo-Pacific. I'm sure we'll keep in touch. All the contacts are there with me. They will definitely share with all of us to keep us in touch for future academic collaborations. I thank you for your contributions, and also for your future collaborations as well in this area of work. Thank you so much.